Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to Ask Your Injury Lawyers, where we interview some of the top lawyers from around the country to answer your top questions. My name is Rob Taramina, and I am the host. But just some basic housekeeping right now. Number one, I want to make sure that everyone can see and hear us. It's really important. So if you could just do me a favor and comment and let us know that you can see and you can hear us. And number two, also, we are going to be again, answering your questions live. So you can actually start right now. And you can actually start commenting and really just ask your questions right now while we go ahead, and we're just going to check the feed ourselves. And so if you could go ahead and start commenting, letting us know that you can see and hear us, that would be great. All right, so first to the stage, I'm going to bring in a medical malpractice attorney. He's a seasoned attorney, and welcome. Let's see here. Welcome, Jim McCarthy. Jim, how you doing, buddy?
Very good, Rob. How are you?
I am doing well. Listen, thank you so much for carving out some time out of your busy schedule. I actually know that you're still working on your cases, so I appreciate you setting some time aside so that we can go ahead and do the show, and you're making yourself available to the community. That's wonderful.
It's my pleasure.
So why don't we just first give everyone some context of who you are. I know I said that you're an attorney, that you work medical malpractice, but let everyone know how long you've been attorney, where you're an attorney, what is your sort of your area of expertise. Go ahead.
I've been practicing since 1991, 28 years doing medical malpractice cases predominantly. And all 28 years have been with Buttafuoco Associates. And basically since that time, since 1991, I've been handling all of the medical malpractice cases that come into the firm. I get assistance from Dan Buttafuoco. But that's basically it.
So let everyone know, I mean, medical malpractice, I feel like is such a broad term. What in fact is medical malpractice, and what sort of is classified as medical malpractice?
Well, medical malpractice is, the definition is, it's a departure when a doctor or a hospital departs from what's good and accepted. It's fairly low standard. It doesn't have to be perfect medical treatment. It has to be acceptable, which a lot of people are surprised to hear, because it is a low bar. Doctors can get away with, lousy treatment, not the best treatment at all. There could be better treatment, but it has to be acceptable in the community, and it's tough. I receive a lot of calls. I would say I receive 30 calls a week, and if I take one case per month, it's a lot. Most people have problems with medical doctors, and it's a risk of the procedure. It is just doesn't meet the standard. And I'm very careful on the cases that we do take, because these cases are very expensive to bring, and they do take a lot of time. Unlike a motor vehicle case or a trip and fall case, where the insurance company might be more eager to settle, the medical malpractice cases typically do not settle until right before trial. One of the reasons for that is that there is reporting requirements in the state of New York. And what that means is that if a doctor settles a medical malpractice case, it gets reported, so that if you're out there looking for a doctor, for a surgeon, for somebody to treat you or your family, you can look them up and see if they've had medical malpractice cases that they've settled. And that's not good for business. so they tend not to want to settle these cases, and they fight. Even when you have a what I would call a slam dunk case, they wait until the last minute, and they make us go through a lot of litigation and a lot of expense. So the cases have to be screened very carefully.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Listen, there are many situations where, people have, tragic situations that happen in a hospital, but not all tragedy is as a result of negligence, right?
Correct.
So you were saying before that there are sometimes known risks. Can you sort of explain that for someone who maybe is new to sort of this phrase medical malpractice? Can you explain to someone, what does that mean, like known risks, and why is it that if someone actually then does suffer one of these known risks, why is that not a medical malpractice case?
Well, it's the law in New York State that if a complication occurs and it's a known risk of the procedure, it may have a 5%, 10% incidence. It's defensible. It just happens because medicine is not a guarantee.
Mhm.
It's really not. Like one example would be, and I see them a lot, when people get a colonoscopy, for instance, and the doctor perforates the colon, and it's a medical disaster.
Yeah.
That's not a case,
Yeah.
because going into that colonoscopy that you run the risk of, and it may be a 5% or a 10% risk,
Yeah.
but you do run the risk of having a perforation and a very, very tragic and bad outcome.
Yeah. Now you mentioned also, laws in New York. Now, are there different sort of laws state to state? Is the laws governing medical malpractice, is it a universal law for all states? How does that sort of work?
Well, for the most part, it's this. The standard is basically the same. You have to prove that the doctor departed from what's good and acceptable medical practice. And before you bring any case in New York State, at least, you must bring it to an expert, and you must have the expert review the case, and then give the attorney the okay, basically saying that the case has merit.
Right.
Before you can bring the case. And
Right.
we have to sign an affidavit saying that this case, I spoke to an expert in the field,
Mhm.
and it's a viable case.
Now we've got some people already commenting, but right now a lot of people are commenting and just sort of complimenting you and really just speaking highly of the law firm. Here's an example here. What has been your experience so far with, I know you're a seasoned attorney, well-respected attorney. What have you seen been the overall sort of response from people that you get to work with all over the years, all your clients?
Do you see me, Rob? Because I lost you.
Oh, I can see you. Can you hear me? We can all see you. We can all hear you.
Yeah, I don't see you though.
Okay. So again, for everyone who's tuning in right now, we do apologize. Listen, this is during the coronavirus, right? So
Yeah.
we're all sort of pivoting a little bit, and we're even pivoting on how we are presenting our show to you. We're able to do this remotely. All the attorneys are able to still join us. But Jim, yes. So even if you can't see it, we can continue because everyone can actually see you. I can
Okay.
see you, and we can all hear you as well.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yep. And so what I was saying is, and I've got a comment on the screen right now of someone commenting saying, we're the Buttafuoco Associates are the best lawyers, and there's a lot of really wonderful comments just speaking to how fond everyone is of Buttafuoco Associates. Can you speak to that a little bit? Over the years, what has been your experience with your clients? Like, what do they say, about the experience with you guys?
Well, I'm not afraid to say my clients do love me.
Yeah.
I have I enjoy a great amount of respect I get from my clients.
Yes.
I've never in 28 years had a client leave me. Now, I know that Mark Freely, my partner, touched upon the fact that you can change lawyers at any point in time. I have never had anybody leave my representation.
Yeah.
And
People are very loyal to you.
I take pride in that.
Yeah, and as you should. And I'll speak from the unbiased side. Is I can say firsthand. Jim literally does not lose clients. So although we were talking about on the topic last week switching lawyers, because a lot of people had concerns about that, and that was one of the most popular questions people had is, can I switch lawyers? And that might be true for in a lot of different areas of law. And maybe some firms are struggling with that. But I know with you, no one leaves you. And I think, and coming from my perspective, that's because number one, you're highly intelligent. So when people meet you and they're working on their case, is they trust they have someone who's incredibly intelligent working the system. And they also, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I'll say it. Maybe you can't. But you're so freaking smart that you're like a lawyer and a doctor. So you really know both sides of it.
Well, I'm smart in limited areas. If I have a case on a certain topic, I learn it, because when you're suing a doctor or you're suing a hospital,
yes,
you have got to get the level of education that they have when you question them. I mean, and you cross-examine them.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know your stuff. And I learn it from experts. I hire experts. I have a whole field of experts in every field.
Yeah.
And they teach me limited areas of medicine. So on certain areas of medicine, I'm very in tune to.
Yeah. Speaking on certain areas of medicine, but it's shifting maybe a little bit about away from medicine, but talking about a specific area. I know something that is a really hot topic right now is vaping, and we're seeing now all the side effects from people who are vaping and abusing it. One question that did come in, and I don't know if you mind addressing this, but what is the status of the Juul case? Juul, I think, is the name of the company, right? The manufacturers of vaping.
It is. They're the largest manufacturer of the vaping, and it's Juule. And I recently signed up my first case because it's relatively new. And I plan on going after the company because they market to young people, teenagers, even younger. They have all these different types of flavors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And as we sit here today, I have a client who's still in the hospital who suffered a traumatic pneumothorax. And what that is basically blowing a hole through your lung.
Oh my gosh.
And he's in bad shape. They're trying to reinflate the lung, but he will have permanent lung damage.
Oh my God!
Because of this insidious vape, and I think cigarettes are probably safer than this, and it's kind of flying under the radar.
Yeah.
And they're marketing it, to kids.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I know when vaping took off, and initially when it sort of hit the market, it wasn't something that was regulated. There weren't a lot of regulations that governed sort of that sort of industry.
Kind of like tobacco in its early days.
In its early days, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that what we're seeing though with vaping versus what we saw initially with tobacco years ago is that it's a lot of kids that are being affected by this.
Yeah, especially the vaping. It's really you could tell by the marketing that they are targeting the young people. I mean, because that's they're going to have a customer for life.
Yep.
Or until they blow out their lung.
Right. Right. Now, I want to introduce someone else and bring someone else to the conversation here. And I want to shift because there's a lot of questions that are coming in have to do with medical malpractice as it relates to coronavirus. And to help us talk about this, I actually want to bring in Dan Buttafuoco. Dan, how you doing?
Hi, Rob. Hi, Jim.
Thanks for joining us again on Ask Your Injury Lawyers. We've been spending some time with Jim McCarthy talking about medical malpractice. What is medical malpractice? Now, you're the founder of Buttafuoco Associates. First, since you can speak from a different perspective, do you remember the first day of day one of Jim working at your office?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Jim was the child when he started working for me. I founded the firm in 1981 That's when I started practicing as a solo practitioner. And then it was March 1st, 1987, when I went out on my own, and Jim joined me shortly after that.
1991.
Yeah. So, we were just getting very busy. We had a plethora of cases and lots of malpractice cases. By the way, we also do legal malpractice cases. We're not afraid to sue lawyers, accountants, doctors, like you name it. If people don't adhere to the standard of care as a professional, well, then if they hurt their clients, they're liable. Engineering malpractice and the like. Jim was a great find from day one. He was working for Corporation Counsel. He was not even a lawyer when I hired him. He was a law clerk. And I knew he was bright, and with some training. And then afterwards, he pretty much learned it on his own and just gravitated towards the heady field of medical malpractice, which involves combing through endless piles of medical records, understanding it. Jim likes nothing better than to sit at home around the fireplace with a 2-foot-high stack of medical records. And we've actually talked about this. I think he's a little weird.
Jim,
That's what I've been doing all day today.
So wait a minute, Jim, is this true that not your work and your hobby has to do with medical malpractice?
Yeah, I do enjoy it. I do like ripping through a big pile of medical records. It's odd, but I do enjoy it.
Well, it's also like a quest. It's almost like solving a puzzle, a mystery.
It is.
It really is like that, and Jim loves that aspect of it. We've talked about it many times. It definitely is interesting, and there's no question about it. I'm just, at the present state of my career, I'm just way too busy to hunker down the way he does, with 2,000 sheets of paper.
It's nice when you get the aha moment when you're digging through medical records and you got them. You find that piece of evidence.
Yeah.
You find that one note in a stack of 2,000 pages that really tips the case into your favor. I do like that aha moment.
Now, listen, Jim, you're like the Sherlock Holmes, by the way, of medical malpractice. And it really is exciting. I mean, I'm not an attorney myself, but I get to sort of from like the perspective of a fan, observe you guys, and it's pretty cool your ability to be able to go through all this stuff, be the investigator, sort of like even be the doctor, be the compassionate friend, be the lawyer. Like you've got to be like very good at all of these things in order to be an excellent medical malpractice attorney. And I think all of these things are the reasons why, we were saying before, no client wants to leave you, because they realize when they find you, they found gold because you're the best of all.
It's funny, Rob.
Thank you.
One of the funniest things, I know Jim's very modest, but one of the funniest things and most enjoyable moments of the week is when Jim comes into my office with a stack of records under his arm, says, "I finally figured out this case. We got him." And that's usually a nice time. And then there are other times he comes in, because we're an honest law firm. Yeah. We don't bring cases that shouldn't be brought. And he says, that Smith case that we thought could have been something, I went through every page of the records and there's nothing there. Yeah. So I can tell you this, that happens quite a bit. I can tell you this, if we are not taking your medical malpractice case, let me tell you, it's pretty much because you don't have a medical malpractice case.
Yeah. Well,
and a lot of people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear it because something went wrong and they were harmed, but it's just not a case. And Dan the other day said that I was grumpy, and I probably am grumpy. But I like to look at it as I tell people the way it is. Yeah. You always get 100% of the truth from me. I don't sugarcoat anything. I don't believe in it. And I think at the end of the day, the clients appreciate that.
That's true.
Absolutely. We actually have some familiar faces right now tuning in and asking some questions. And we've got Scott, who's also one of the attorneys. He says, what is the process to figure out if you have a medical malpractice case? Scott right now is actually tuning in live from our YouTube channel, which is great. So for all of you people who are actually watching this from YouTube, thank you so much for joining us. And if you're just logging in right now, We're speaking with medical malpractice attorney Jim McCarthy from Buttafuoco Associates and the founding attorney from Buttafuoco Associates, Daniel Buttafuoco, to just sort of like pick apart and dissect what is medical malpractice, and especially in sort of in today's climate. How does this sort of fit into things? So you guys are welcome to comment any questions, and both Jim and Dan are welcome to answer them. They're on the hot seat right now. But if one of you guys, maybe Jim or Dan, want to sort of tackle this, what is the process to figure out if you have a medical malpractice case?
Well, the process is always the same. You get the medical records. You sit down, you go through them once, you go through them twice, you go through them 3 times. You find what you think may be a departure from what's good and acceptable.
Yeah.
And then you give it to an expert in the field. And then that expert will tell you. And there are a lot of experts out there. There are experts that will say anything for money because they are expensive. I do not like experts who will say anything for money. I like experts that are well qualified. I get them from good hospitals, good medical schools, and that's who I use, because when you come at your adversary with an expert from Brown, Princeton, something like that, they fear you. They know. And, your adversaries in medical malpractice are not like your adversary in a car accident or something like that. They're highly trained. They're very qualified. This is what they do. So you are dealing with a strong adversary. So you must come at them with the strongest evidence and proof that you have. And once that expert okays your case, you bring the case.
Yeah. Now I know there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that say it's sort of impossible to be able to bring a case against any doctor, because doctors, they band together, and the insurance companies and all the powers that be in the court system, they favor doctors and they're protected. First of all, is that true? We've got Mark actually just bringing in the questions. Do doctors win malpractice cases a lot? And is there a big conspiracy? Can you sort of shed some light on that?
Well, yeah, there is some truth to that. You see it in the field of like orthopedics. The orthopedics, for some reason, I'm not sure why, they tend to stick together. But what I typically will do will be I will pull an expert from New Jersey, Connecticut, one of the neighboring states. You're seeing it more now with Northwell on Long Island. They're kind of banding together because they're buying up so many hospitals. They're up to 11 or 12 hospitals. And one of their doctors is not going to testify against another one. So it kind of limits your access to experts. But there's, a big state in New Jersey and Connecticut, and that's where I tend to get a lot of my experts from.
Gotcha. Now, Dan, I got a question for you. This is actually a question that just sort of came in here. Are all personal injury lawyers capable to represent you in a medical malpractice case?
Oh, absolutely not. Medical malpractice cases represent, in personal injury litigation, the highest competency of lawyers in the profession. As Jim rightly said, your adversaries in a medical malpractice case are going to be those lawyers who are the most skilled in the defense bar industry, meaning that these are highly intelligent, very experienced, very aggressive law firms that are going to be defending the doctor or the hospital. And they're paid a premium to do that. They get a higher hourly rate than do the lawyers who represent, defendants in car accident or slip and fall suits. I will add something to what Jim said. You were asking, how do you find out, I think it was Scott's question, whether you have a malpractice case. Often I get the initial calls. Sometimes Jim gets the initial call. And there's a number of stages that we have to go through to ascertain whether a prospective client has a viable malpractice case. And many of them don't make it past the first phone call. And so if you get past the first phone call with either me or Jim, and you claiming to have a malpractice case or a potential malpractice case, you still have a few more hurdles to go through. Now, we're not putting the clients through the hurdles. Certainly, the case has to pass certain hurdles. So the very first hurdle in the first conversation is going to be, do you have a severe and devastating injury? I mean, if somebody, I don't care what the doctor did, but if all he did was insult you or give you a hangnail, then that's not a case, no matter how bad it is. So you have to start you have to start backwards in reviewing a medical malpractice case lead or inquiry. So what I do is I stop them before I get into a 2-hour story, and I said, please, I've done this for 40 years. Just tell me what are you experiencing now? How do you feel? Well, if they say, well, I'm fine, I'm saying, I really don't need to hear anymore because you don't have a case. Well, you don't know what the doctor did. I don't need to know what the doctor did because you don't have a case. Because no matter what the doctor did, if you're not hurt, you don't have a case. So I always start with the injury. I want to see something. Well, I don't want to see people hurt, but you need to have something where it's either a permanent and severe or devastating injury or something like death. A relative calling saying, look, we lost so-and-so, we think it's malpractice. Well, then that gets through the first hurdle, which is the phone call. The next step is to get the records. And then, the second step is for us to look through the records and based on our knowledge of medicine and what we can garner from our learning and from the internet to see if there's a potential for a case. That's usually the second step. The third step is to continue to comb through the records and put it through an expert. And if the expert gives you the green light, that's the third step. And then the fourth step is that departure, even if the medical expert says there was a departure from good and accepted medical practice, that departure has to cause the injury. Sometimes you get a departure, but it doesn't cause the injury, or the injury would have happened anyway. And many of these cases are defended on causation, which that's what we call causation. So there's a number of steps in the process. And then, you're finally able to bring the case and certify that you have a case. So it's not like a car accident or a slip and fall where when someone calls, the first question I ask is, how did the accident happen? Oh, I was stopped at a light and, a FedEx truck plowed into me. Okay, well, now we know you have a case. Now we just have to see how hurt you are. Or I tripped over an uneven sidewalk that, clearly was defective and it was owned by the homeowner and blah, blah, blah. Then we get into what the injury is. But with malpractice, it's the opposite. So that's really important. So I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much, actually, for going into detail. I think it's so important that you guys do this, and I do appreciate that you guys are willing to open up and be really transparent about the entire process. I think that the audience and clients and potential clients all really appreciate honesty. I think that's sort of a differentiator these days. Now, I know both of you have been attorneys for a while. What's one thing that really stands out to you guys that's different from the way that maybe you operated as a lawyer 25, 30 years ago versus today?
I used to use textbooks.
Paper and pen. What is that?
Textbooks and go to the medical library. And now I get everything online. That's the biggest difference.
Yeah. For me, the internet is a big game changer, not only in how we practice and how we do research, also in how we prepare documents, and also in how we present ourselves to the public. The fact that we're doing this podcast, we are attempting to educate the public. People are stuck at home. They're looking for something to do. We want to educate people as to the mystery of what it means to be a malpractice or an injury lawyer. And we also want to offer some free legal education to people. We want people to know that, an educated client is our best client, and that's what we try to do. When we take a case, even if it's a case that we ultimately will reject after going through a lot of work that you don't have to pay us for. A lot of times we spend, I don't know, Jim, 100 hours on a case, tell the people there's no case, and they don't know us, not even one penny for that. But at least what we can give them in that situation, even though they're not paying us, they will at least know what happened to their loved one. They will at least know what happened to in their medical treatment, in their medical history. So even if there's not a case, at least they're going to find out the facts and the explanation as to what happened and what went wrong. And then if there's a case, well, then that's a bonus, and then they can get some compensation. But, another one of the things I want to point out is that we have great medical malpractice lawyers all over the country. We have some of the top lawyers in America that work for us, that I'm personal friends with, that are on the inner circle of advocates and other major trial lawyer groups that are so highly specialized in one particular area. And you could use specialized outside of New York, by the way. So it's not just that we have Jim, who is absolutely one of the top, but when we get out of state, we have very, very major lawyers outside of the state that work very closely with us. That, these are some of my best friends. So, we're able to handle cases in every single state. Recently, we had a really big case in the state of Iowa, and I flew down there in person for that one, and spent a lot of time down there, and we had a successful resolution of the case. We had one of the highest brain damage baby cases in North Carolina, working very closely with a firm there that we know quite well, that we're still very friendly with. And so we do this all over the country. It's not just in New York. Jim will even help me with some of the out-of-state cases. Mostly what Jim does, though, is in New York.
Now, Jim, we have a question that just came in here from Leslie, and she asked, Jim, while sifting through medical paperwork, can you tell us your favorite aha moment? I think she's referencing what you had mentioned earlier, but what's your favorite aha moment? And she's also thanking you guys for doing this.
I got to think about that.
She's putting you on the spot.
Yeah. I've had a bunch of them. Nothing is coming to mind right now. But I have had a bunch of them.
Jim, do you remember when we found that one case where the lady that worked she was a manager of a Starbucks, and you had the aha moment where you found that where the piece of paper from the fracture was embedded in the wound that caused the infection?
And there were two different orthopedists that were working on her, and they both pointed fingers at each other. But there was no doubt that there was a piece of paper in there that caused her bad infection.
That was an aha moment. How about the kid that had the ear? That almost he almost died, or did he die from the ear?
No, the boy put a 5-year-old put a bead in his ear, and the doctor pushed it through the eardrum into the inner ear.
Oh my gosh! And
destroyed the kid's hearing on that side.
We've had so many of these aha moments. I mean, where you find that one sort of thing in the record where it shows that the client was complaining of chest pain, and recently we got that cardiac case, right, where we weren't sure whether to take it, and as we went through it, we sort of had an aha moment with that one.
Yeah. He complained of chest pain, and the doctor ordered a CAT scan and did not order a stress test. And the stress test is the gold standard. You have to have a stress test in a situation like that, and didn't have it. And then the guy suffered a massive, massive heart attack. And
permanent damage, though, with permanent damage.
Permanent damage. Yeah, he's got a defibrillator in his chest. And he's in bad shape, and he was a relatively healthy man before this.
I think my favorite aha moment was when it wasn't even in a malpractice case. It was on the paralyzed police officer case where you got the lady from the state of New York to admit that it was a dangerous condition on the deposition testimony. That sort of sealed the case up for us. That was absolutely, that to me was my favorite aha moment, I think.
That was like two questions that were worth $15 million.
Right.
Wow,
right.
Incredible.
Yeah, we've had a bunch of these aha moments, we'll have to think about them for the next broadcast, maybe.
I think that I would actually make a great segment that you guys can sort of like relive the past and share with us all these great experiences. Now, Jim.
Wait, I just thought of another one. Do you remember when I was questioning that doctor on that malpractice case? And I said, you didn't diagnose Hodgkin's disease. And in front of the jury, he says, and you didn't either.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I stood and looked at the jury for like about a whole 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all rolled their eyes.
Oh my
Like,
God.
I knew at that point we had the case won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second time we tried that case. Remember the first time?
Yeah. It was a disaster.
The judge almost threw the doctor in jail.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Well, before we reveal too much here, because I have a feeling you guys can have go off on these
Oh, don't get me started with aha
and
moments.
accidentally, reveal some stuff. But Jim, after the show, if people have some additional questions, would you mind if they emailed you personally?
Not at all.
Good, because I actually already have it queued up, and if whether or not you said yes, I'm going to put it up.
Feed, so
All right. Well, there you go. If anyone has any questions for Jim, even after the show, this is his personal email address. I think this is also something that makes the attorneys at Buttafuoco Associates pretty unique. And that's that, they really make themselves accessible. They give away their cell phone numbers. They give away their personal email addresses. And right here on a public live show, we're giving away Jim's personal email. So Jim, I really appreciate that.
please email me if you have any questions.
Now, what we're going to do is, so for you guys, Dan and Jim, don't go anywhere. We're going to be ending the show here, but we're going to be continuing the show on a different channel where we don't have as many restrictions. And I'm teasing our audience right now. We're going to be talking in detail about some of the more sensitive things as it relates to medical malpractice and coronavirus. I know a lot of you guys have questions about that. Where we're currently broadcasting, we do have some restrictions, which is kind of crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the comments so that everyone knows where to go. There we go. Hopefully everyone saw that link. I just put out a link of where you guys can go find us. We're going to be broadcasting there in just 5 minutes, where we're going to be able to talk a little bit more into detail with no restrictions versus where we are right now. This way you guys can ask some more tough questions. And as the attorneys can get a little bit more transparent and serious and go to detail about medical malpractice and coronavirus. I know it's a hot topic. I know a lot of you guys are upset, have lots of questions, and I do apologize for not being able to bring in those questions into this feed, but I do promise we are going to be actually tackling those tough questions as it relates to medical malpractice and the coronavirus right now, COVID-19, in a new stream. We're going to be broadcasting in 5 minutes with Dan and Jim. Dan and Jim, don't go anywhere. But for this stream, guys, thank you so much. And before we tune out here, is there any sort of final comments that you sort of would like to sort of address, or anything you'd like to say to our audience today?
No, we'll address it in the other feed.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to say is that if you ever have a question regarding medical malpractice and it involves a serious injury or a death, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call us. You certainly can email us, but we're more than happy to talk to you. We are good listeners, and we would like to at least educate you about your case to the best extent that we can. And I don't want anyone to feel intimidated. We're friendly, even though, like we said that, sometimes Jim is grumpy, but the only time Jim is grumpy is when he has to be grumpy, like when he's questioning a doctor. Yeah. But we're very personable. We're very accessible. We love our people, our clients. We love what we do. And we're more than happy to help people in a very difficult situation. That's what we do. One of the things that I love about what we do as trial lawyers and as injury lawyers, as malpractice lawyers, is that we really help people. I mean, we literally change people's lives. It sounds like a motto, we help accident injury victims rebuild their lives. But the fact of the matter is, we do make a difference. I mean, I still get Christmas cards for people that say things like, if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for your firm, if it wasn't for Jim McCarthy, Mark Freely, or Sean, or any of the number of lawyers that we have, I'd be homeless today. I would have no medical care. I would have no house. I'd have no roof over my head. So, the bottom line is, you're ultimately, you don't have to be a pastor, a preacher. You could serve God and serve the community in your profession. And, whether you're a medical professional, and we love our medical professionals, even though we unfortunately have to sue them sometimes. My own daughter is a medical professional. So we are a firm that believes in justice and an equality. And we only bring cases that need to be brought, that should be brought. We have nothing against doctors or hospitals. We're big fans of them. In fact, we just recently, last week, we sponsored 2 luncheons for all of the OBGYN staff at Stony Brook Hospital. And we wanted them to know that they were loved and that we support the work that they're doing and that they are heroes. So we're not in any way implying that doctors are bad and need to be sued. We understand that they provide a very valuable service. But when it does unfortunately happen that someone violates the standard of care, either through neglect or carelessness, and somebody is seriously hurt, well, then you want to talk to us, and we're happy to help you.
Well, listen, Dan and Jim, thank you guys so much for having this amazing conversation and sharing all this incredible information, valuable information for our audience, for all of our current clients and potential clients and friends and family of our clients. We really appreciate, Dan and Jim, your time here and opening up to us.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
And for everyone else, follow us right now. I'll actually go ahead and I'll put the link in again for everyone. We want everyone to follow us to this other channel now where we are going to be able to go into more detail about a topic we can't do here because there are some restrictions right now. As everyone know, coronavirus has hit us hard, and there's a lot of things that both Dan and Jim are going to be unpacking as it relates to medical malpractice and COVID-19, the coronavirus. So go ahead and click that link. But thank you guys for tuning in here, and we'll see you over at the other channel. Take care, guys.
Take care.